Hello and welcome to History Snack. Thanks for joining me today. Grab a snack, grab some cereal, and let's get into today's video. And remember, many facts are condensed or omitted for time, so you can finish your meal within the time of this video. Let's go. The recent earthquake in Myanmar and Thailand has been all over the headlines. The Burmese diaspora are scrambling for answers and trying to send help, and international aid organizations are trying to work around the military junta and its continued bombardment of rebel positions, as well as its suppression of information and access. As of the day of me recording this, the long-term effects of how this earthquake will shape the civil war, which has been going on since 2021, are yet to be seen. While some rebel groups have called for a ceasefire for humanitarian reasons, it's been reported that the junta has continued attacking. Now, in the last few years, it had seemed like the Burmese military was on the back foot. This earthquake occurred right in the middle of this war, and while nobody really wins in a situation like this, only time will tell who will be the worse off between the warring parties. These events made me think of other times in which ongoing wars or conflicts were interrupted either by nature or a third army with its own interests. A fascinating pseudo-example of this in early modern history was the Inca Civil War in the 1500s. The Spanish conquistadors have a weird relation to this conflict. Firstly, it is widely believed that the smallpox they brought to the Inca Empire upon landing and discovering the area made its way to the Inca Emperor Huayna Capac, setting off a civil war between his sons who were competing for the throne, Atahualpa and Huascar. While that conflict was raging, the Spanish sort of stayed on the sidelines, making alliances and strategic moves, while Francisco Pizarro gained royal permission to conquer Peru on Spain's behalf. All while unknowingly disease was ravaging both armies. Almost as soon as Atahualpa won the conflict, the Spanish attacked Atahualpa's forces with their indigenous allies. From there, most people know the story. Atahualpa was executed and the Spanish went on to conquer most of the American continent, bringing much destruction, cultural suppression, disease and slavery to the land, making way for the current racial outlook of the continent, and the independent nations we know today. The Amerindian populations of this continent still live on through vibrant modern Amerindian communities and mixed-race mestizo populations. Now, the most tumultuous period of conflict interruption in modern history, however, was China in the 1930s. At this time, China had been free of its old imperial system for approximately 15 years. However, in 1927, a civil war broke out between the then-ruling Kuomintang government, aka the Nationalists, and the now-ruling Communist Party. This was all thrown into disarray when in 1931, massive floods hit China, killing an estimated 4 million people at the highest of estimations. This largely happened in Kuomintang and warlord-controlled areas, as the Communists still only had small pockets of territory by that point. Furthermore, the Japanese Empire occupied Manchuria in that same year, and the Kuomintang's inability to stop both that, as well as mitigate the effects of the floods, really hurt their reputation. In 1937, Imperial Japan ramped up its efforts to subvert Chinese freedom, aiming to take the whole country, forcing both the nationalists and the communists to literally put their differences aside to deal with Japan. This might be one of the most fascinating events in history. Very rarely is a situation so dire and an enemy so brutal that a whole civil war can virtually be paused to deal with something else. Almost like a movie. Even more dramatically, this only happened because Kuomintang officers had to kidnap their own leader, Chiang Kai-shek, and force him to ally with the communists to fight off Japan. Now, they did end up working together, but a lot of mistrust remained between the two factions, and this conflict ultimately favored the communists. As much as a brutal occupation can benefit anyone, I guess. See, the communists are generally believed to have been far more effective at fighting off the Japanese than the nationalists were, and this contributed to a surge in popular support for Mao Zedong's forces, and it also helped that the Kuomintang was rife with corruption, ill discipline, and infighting. This all meant that when Japan was finally defeated in 1945 and the two factions could go back to going after each other within 4 years, the communists had driven the nationalists out of the mainland, confining them to Taiwan where they still exist today. The Communist Party has ruled the mainland ever since. Finally, we go to Cyprus in 1974, where a unique interruption may have actually saved lives. Amongst the backdrop of Greek-Turkish violence amongst civilians in Cyprus, a coup sponsored by the military junta of Greece took place, with the supposed goal of allowing Greece to occupy the island. In response, Turkey invaded Cyprus from the north. After about a month of fighting, and Turkish and Turk Cypriot forces advancing south, the United Nations who had a presence on the island since 1964, decided to expand its buffer zone, therefore preventing both sides from running into each other. Near the buffer zone is Dhekelia, one of 2 UK bases left over from the British occupation of the island that ended in 1960, meaning the Turkish forces would have had to barrel through the buffer zone and risk being attacked, as well as risk military conflict with the UK had they decided to continue their advance. Therefore, the conflict essentially has become frozen North Korea style and remains at this current division to this day: Cyprus and Northern Cyprus. Thanks for watching, everyone, and exploring these stories with me. I hope you enjoyed your meal. صحتين.